Rinki, finally, welcome to Rise Podcast. We've been planning this for a while and now we get time to do this together. It's really good to have you.
It's so great to be here, Abhishek. Thanks for having me.
Rinki, I think I know you for now 4 years. And I think since I've known you and just seeing your career journey, and I've known you for longer actually, even before I met you, and you had phenomenal career journey. Ran security at Twitter in its heyday, Bill.com, IBM, Palo Alto Networks. I don't know which other companies left. You have managed budgets over $100 million. And now you are at one of the fastest growing security company leading the strategy. And that's not all. You just started your own fund, Lockstep. Very excited about Lockstep. It's really, really amazing. And I think what's most interesting every time I meet you, it's like you're just getting started. How do you do all of this?
I don't know, but the hours are crazy. But I actually am having a ton of fun, and so that just energizes you. I still feel like I'm early in what I'm doing, and especially with what we're doing when building it with Lockstep. And I feel like what excites me right now is that I get to help shape what actually works in enterprise. Whereas I've been the consumer for so many years. I still am. But now with Lockstep and what I'm doing at Upwind, it's like really driving a philosophy that I believe and I know that works. And it's just a different angle to come at it from. So it just feels like I'm starting fresh right now.
It's truly amazing, Rinki. I'm very, very curious, what you would be doing in next few years. But before we get into that, I think you're one of very, very few people who have seen enterprise selling from various standpoints, right? You were at Palo Alto and these companies managing incredibly large budgets. Now you are at an actually security vendor and you are a founding partner. So you're seeing startups coming to you pitching every day. So I'm curious, Rinki, when you see these startups pitching or Upwind pitching to their end customers, what do you think the startups they know what they're doing, get it right, and the other ones struggle? Like, do you see common patterns right off the bat when founders come to you?
Yeah. I feel like at the end of the day, we're all people, right? I'm not just a security person. I have so many dimensions to who I am. And I think startups that get it right, they want to build a relationship. They understand it's a people-driven business and you understand the person. And then do you even understand what's important to me right now? Or are you just there to go pitch me your own technology, right? Like, do you understand the buyer's problem? Like, I think founders who get enterprise buying, they understand nobody wakes up wanting agentic AI. They wake up wanting fewer incidents, faster response, less operational drag, or fewer people on their team that are burned out right at 2 a.m. in the morning or whatever it is, and you want more time with your family and things like that. I think the teams that struggle lead with architecture or autonomy or intelligence before they can even explain where this fits in to the existing enterprise workflow or budget or decision process. And if they can't clearly articulate who owns the problem, who signs the check, and who gets blamed if it goes wrong, they don't understand yet enterprise buying. And so I think it's really important to understand who is your buyer. It's not always the CISO, right? The CISO might just be somebody you want a relationship with that understands what you're doing. Your buyer might be somebody on the team, and your conversations need to be accordingly. And I think startups that get it right, they really care about the problem, not just the solution they've built, because the solution will continue to evolve and change. And they care about the company that they're selling to, and they've done the research, they've taken the time to understand what problems that company, that CISO, that CIO might be facing.
And that makes a lot of sense, Frankie, from what you're saying. And I think just me doing Ghost 8 years ago, like coming from very technical background, I did have a lot of customer experience because I ran support teams at Cisco. But often us founders come from very technical backgrounds that no experience selling. And second time founders, they've gone through, the journey and they know that. So how do you think first time founders who may not have connections at all, right? They're just trying. I know so many of my founder friends, they're doing LinkedIn cold message, and someone like you who probably gets thousands of messages and they may have phenomenal technology. How do you think they can bridge the gap? Like what can they do to reach someone like you and get even that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, even as a first-time founder, Abhishek, I remember Gaurav actually introduced us. I didn't even know what Bolster was, and I didn't know we were a customer. And he's like, Rinki, I want you to meet Abhishek. Well, that helps a lot when your peers or your employees or somebody's like, hey, they're excited about a person and they're excited about certain technology. And I remember when I first got to meet you, it was like I was expecting like, oh, you're probably going to sell me so we expand or anything like that. And we literally never talked about like our contract or what the product currently was doing. We kind of talked about trends and like where you were heading with the future, right? And that's where you and I connected. And I wanted to have more conversations. I think we were supposed to have a 30-minute conversation that went an hour long. And um, that's what I love, right? Like at the end of the day, is this like somebody you consider like a visionary? Is this person going to solve my problem today? Are they also going to solve future problems for me? Is it someone I trust is going to build something really incredible? But do I feel like if I'm early in this, people are going to be like, oh, Rinki was one of the first adopters of this tech when they're really, really big. And then obviously, like, I think like other customer referrals, other people that I trust referring a company, I think that cuts through the noise. A lot of innovation and a lot of amazing innovation happening right now, which I think is really exciting for practitioners like me. And so, like, the more that you get validation and the more, again, like that personal touch works. And then I'll say one more point is like, founders reaching out can make all the difference too. Like it's not just the sales team job, right? Like I want to get to know the founder, especially if it's a smaller company. Like I definitely want to know what they're building and what the future looks like. And I think most practitioners want that.
Rinki, I'm very curious. You work for very, very big companies early in your career. What made you take these bets at tiny startups, which can actually, ruin your reputation? And what made you take those bets? Because, I've worked at one of very, very large enterprise myself, and people are, especially in security, where the risk of adopting something new could be huge to your role. So what made you, go against the grain and, be so startup friendly? Like, what changed, or was it always there, or was there a point in time? Why take those bets at all? Why not just follow like amazing career path that you already had?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think you're the first person that's asked me that question. And I think back actually, I worked at PG&E. And when you think about PG&E, I think the average age of the company at the time was like 55. And I was a college new grad at the time that came in. And so you're thinking about like elevator conversations were all about retirement and pension plans. And I'm like sitting there, whatever, like, what am I going to do? This is before anybody even knew about cybersecurity. This was when it was called information protection over there. There was no CISO. But somehow our team had some young folks, and they were like very much like if you think about the type of company that is very traditional software, very traditional like cybersecurity vendors that were there, and there was a group of people I worked with that like brought in all these new companies. There was a leader that like was very connected with innovation, and so I got to like very very early on get to see kind of these innovative companies and what they were doing, and you compare it to like what you had back then and you compare some of the newer tech that was coming out, I mean, I can't tell you the user interfaces and how different it was. And it was like, why are we using this old stuff when you could be doing it so differently? And at that point, I didn't even think about the risk. I just thought about, man, this is like way better product, right? And it's so much easier as a user that didn't know what they were doing to leverage these products. So to me, like that was in my mind all the time. And then I went on to actually more innovative companies and very, very traditional stack around cyber. And I tried to bring in a new company. I actually failed at implementing it. The technology at the time, it was a phishing testing program. And it was like, we completely flopped. And I had this huge contract that basically I couldn't do anything with. And it was a lot of problems in that, in kind of how I deployed it. And it was because I was used to what I was doing before, realizing that I can't operate that way. So I have had the fails, but here's the thing, like even with the new tech and you failing, you realize like, man, these guys are doing something different and you learn from your failures and like that makes you want to do more of it because then when the successes happen when you're adopting some of these startups, like you're like, oh my gosh, now everybody in the world uses this. And I was like one of their first customers and kind of drove the path to innovation in that way. And that's why I like taking bets on founders. I'll also say that I think we have to. Like if we're gonna beat the attackers at the game, like we're gonna have to work more efficiently and like be way more productive. And we got to invest in early stage companies.
I do have follow-up questions on that because this is very interesting, Rinki, but I'll get to the next question. Let's say, I mean, you're seeing demos all the time, vendors are pitching to upwind, you as a vendor pitching to companies. when you see an amazing demo, as a VC or as a buyer or as a vendor, and the demo has gone really, really well. But what happens later that derails the deal? Where do most founders stumble after the initial excitement?
Yeah, like when I think about IT and security and you're bringing on a like product, like you're going to get usually the CISO, CIO, the person that brings in the demo is going to be so excited about it, right? And they're going to be like, okay, let's go do something. And then they're probably going to go have some internal meetings and they realize, oh, legal is going to ask about liability, security is going to ask about risk, IT is going to ask, or engineering is going to ask about integration, procurement is going to ask about pricing. And you run into all these different things that and then the business is asking, why does this matter now? And I think founders really struggle when after the demo, they're assuming that the momentum and that like excitement in the beginning is going to carry itself. And you realize that in enterprise sales, momentum must like almost actively be managed. And you have to make sure that you're helping champion and navigate internal objections. Otherwise, like this deal is just going to stall quietly, right? And I think it's really important to think about like what are you going to arm you're the team that you're working with at your buyer in terms of like, hey, we should pull in these folks early, let's like have them on the first calls, like let's make sure that you continue having the conversations that after the demo you don't let too much time go by before you touch back again and build that relationship and make sure that you're coming in knowing that it's not going to be easy for the buyer to go and bring in a product. Things have been really, really difficult, especially with our regulatory pressures and so forth.
That's great, Rinki. So I'm curious, when startup just in very early stage and they're still building their MVP, and you are a very, very early adopter, they may not even have bandwidth. Product is not ready. They're just getting your feedback, and they're really not thinking about procurement. It's like, hey, can I deliver value? But with agentic AI, there are way more stakeholders, and security teams are way more concerned about data, right? And then legal is more concerned. So how do you suggest that startups just go out and navigate that? Like when it's like we don't know, we're doing a demo that next time it's going to actually work, right? Like that's on top of mind. So what would be your best advice on the startups that you have seen all around? How do they manage it?
Yeah, I think like the sharing data piece is a real challenge, right? And I think a lot of sellers, like a lot of like vendors, the founders, they feel like, oh, like just give me this access to this data. Well, I have to jump through hurdles to get you access to that data and why I'm giving you access. And you're so early and the risk that comes with it. And so like I think one, if I feel like it's not, if what you're solving for is not compelling enough, why am I going to go jump through those hurdles? Like you better have sold me like that this is going to be so worth it for you that I actually want to give it a chance and be a design partner, knowing that it's going to take some time to build this. But like if you can make some commitments to me that Rinky, once you go and adopt this, your productivity is gonna go X%. You're gonna be able to like help your people have better careers. You're able to make these commitments, and I can start seeing it in the design partnership. Where right there are some of those like agreements between us. It all of a sudden makes it worth it jumping through those hoops because at the end of the day, that's like something I can also take to the board as a win. I can take it to our executives as a win. That hey, we're trying something new that hasn't been done before, but the opportunity is massive in what we might be able to do behind that. And so like giving me the points on that right off the bat makes it so like I want to engage and do that.
So if I understand this correctly, Rinki, I think the value proposition should be so huge for the buyer that people are willing to take those bets. And even if the falls down, then you can go to the CEO and the board, especially now with agentic AI, that it's absolutely worth it. And us founders, whether tech is ready or not, basically what you're saying is like focus on our messaging and giving you that brochure, which actually talks about value propositions clearly.
Exactly. And like if and you know, like everybody's different and their risk appetite is different and the company's risk appetite is different. So understanding like, can you find a use case where the data sharing might be minimal if they're more risk averse and like still show massive value? Like how do you get to that point? Right. So or can you do test data or something like that to be able to show value? So I think it's one like I'm solving a problem that's real, I can feel it, and then, like, how you're solving it differently, and then, like, convince me, like, that I wanna be the first one to, like, be a design partner and be part of that story.
So I'm very curious, Venki. how do as startups go find people like you? And you come from the DNA of very, very old, very slow moving companies. But even in those slow moving companies, you have this DNA of startup DNA within yourself. So me going as a founder, if I have to find like 5 other Rinkies who are early adopters, what would be your strategy if you were doing a startup?
I think it's, I think a lot of people, one, get stuck on the early adopters are like at the C level. I think a lot of C levels are strategic. That's why we are C levels, and you're thinking about vision and you want to know the innovation and the trends. And, one thing I'll say too is like when you talk to startups are talking to everybody. And so like you learn a lot from what your peers are doing just by talking to startups and understanding what others are doing out there, right? And so I think like a lot of times like as you're coming to us and we're kind of learning about that innovation that happens, it makes the security program within the company even stronger. But going back to your question around like, how do you find people like this? I think sometimes your buyer is not just the C level. It's folks that are actually facing the problem on the teams and they start becoming the champions. They make the C-level champions, right? That's actually really fun for us when the team comes in, does that. And then I think like there's a lot of communities exist. I know we're running one at Lockstep for sure that where you have like you can like we want innovative CISOs. We're all wanting to give back to the community and give back to the founders. If nothing else, at least giving feedback and engaging, but investing like in the startup ecosystem. And I think there are actually more than you would believe that exist. I think how founders approach it is really important. Like you're not like a like one of the, like an innovative person that can't necessarily be your buyer. Like think about a heavily regulated industry. The CISO or CIO there might not be like they still might love innovation, but they might not be able to be your buyer. But they may have incredible feedback. They may say, "Hey, I'll look at you in the future when you're bigger." Might be like a great advisor. And so I just think that like there's opportunities, and you'll find those people if you're like really looking at how am I going to solve this problem in the most unique way, and not just trying to make the sale.
So you make an interesting point, Rinky, on people reporting to you and ideas coming from you. And I know you, through different means, through different people too. So not just personally. So your team thinks very, very highly of you, and you're a great leader. But that's not always the case with all the leaders, right? I've seen all kinds of leaders who are not going to listen, and it has to be them. And in when you're working with C execs, is a lot of egos that you have to manage, and not everybody is you. So that me working from bottom up may not always work, and it hasn't. All right, it worked in your case. Clearly, I knew Gaurav from Uber days, and he came to build.com and he connected us, right? So how would I manage that part, and how do I should manage those people?
Yeah, and I could share this as a now being on the like as a vendor too, but also as a buyer, right? Like I don't think it's just one relationship. It's you're totally right. You meet people of all different like types, and sometimes like even I'm very opinionated on where I think what company I think we need to go with, even if my team is like going in a different direction. It's going to take a lot for them to convince me otherwise, and vice versa. Sometimes I'm not like that opinionated, and I'm learning from them. I think like in the case that you mentioned, and this matters no matter what, like egos exist. And I think even as being at Upwind and selling, it's like no matter who you're, and we talked about this in an earlier question, but like no matter who you're working with, you're not just selling to that team or that one person, you're selling to the company and you're selling like to multiple stakeholders. And so I think it's really important. Like you're working bottoms up sometimes, but you also need to be working top down. A lot of times you work top down and then like you haven't brought the team like is like they can throw a monkey wrench into it, and that's happened to me too where I'm like very convicted and the team is absolutely not, and they weren't brought along in the right way. Vendor didn't work with them properly, and so it just didn't work out, unfortunately. So it is a relationship business. You do have to be like at every layer be able to talk to folks in a different way and understand like what is it that you need to do to manage the egos or manage what's important to different stakeholders.
So you're basically saying take Gaurav out for more dinners.
Not necessarily, but like, like it's funny because like, it's funny when like Gaurav doesn't put every founder in front of me, right? And it's like and Gaurav and I will chat a lot. I go to him and I've learned a ton. Like, it's like, Gaurav, tell me all the vendors in the space. Why do you like which ones? I give him my strong points of view. We debate it, right? I believe that's what builds a better program from a security perspective. But I love talking to visionaries. I love people that are going to change my mind and the way I think. That's how I ended up at Upwind, because it changed my philosophy on cybersecurity as a practitioner. And I'm like, they're doing something different. And so like that to me, and same with you, when I met with you, it's like you're doing something different back at Bolster in terms of what your vision was. And so like I love that kind of thing, right? And so but you try to sell me Bolster, I'm gonna be like, don't sell to me, Abhishek, go to the team. This is not like necessarily one of my top priorities. And then you'll say, okay, like who do I talk to? And you got to bring along these other folks, right? In this particular case, we're already a customer of Bolster, but I know you were thinking about like the email security space at the time. And I was like, okay, I think it's super interesting. Like, okay, now get Gaurav excited about it. So I think it's that kind of thing, understanding that, right? Like, I want to talk to you about vision, but then you got to go convince my team that they're going to like want to buy it. And that means like they've got to think there's something very unique. And are they going to save budget? Are they going to like get something better? What is it?
So I know you mentioned phishing testing earlier. That didn't go well, and I know we have spoke about that on a different occasion. Clearly, the founder, I don't know if you can mention them, made you a champion, and you went to bat for it, and it didn't work out early on, but you both made it work really, really well. And I know the founder; he's really, really amazing. I mean, I've not met him, but we graduated from the same school. So what did this founder do to make you champion and risk your career? Like, risk with CISOs is so high that you can do 99% things right, and you can do 1%, and not even your fault. Like 1% things go wrong, it still comes to you, right? And we've seen plenty of cases. So what does this founder did do to make you such a big champion to bat and go through all of this things that you went through?
Yeah. So like just the story was that I rolled out this phishing testing program back at eBay, and it was PhishMe, and PhishMe was early days. They were selling mostly to banks, and phishing testing was a common thing at banks, but not in like tech, right? Those eBay, I think, might have been one of the first tech companies that was a PhishMe customer. We signed the deal. That was Rohit Balani, who's a close friend who I'm going to see in a couple months. But we signed the deal with PhishMe. It was a big deal. And then it was time to roll it out, and that was my responsibility. And I was doing a test with a small portion of the InfoSec team back then. And I didn't tell anybody that the test was coming. I just did it. And then someone must have not been having a good day, thought they got scammed, and made a big deal about it. It went all the way up to HR, and HR called me and said, you pull a trick like that one more time and you'll get fired. And it's like a funny story now, because you're like, okay, now it's like, this is part like the DNA of most companies through phishing testing. In fact, it's required at many companies, but this is how it was back then. And I remember telling Rohit, like, we have this huge contract. Like, I can't run this. I can't do this anymore. Like, my hamstrung, right? And he basically said, okay, what else can we do for you then? Like, I don't feel good about having taken this from you guys, like, and not being able to deliver anything. And we did some training, communications, and they helped me with all of that. And then I actually became a customer of theirs, probably at like 5 other companies after that I went to. I was a customer at Intuit. I was a customer at Palo Alto Network, on and on and on. Every company I've been to, I brought it in. And so I think but it's because of the partnership that he had with me, and like how we navigated a really difficult situation. And it was bad for him too, because was supposed to be a case study for him on first non-banking company doing this. And fortunately, it totally flopped, right? But he just was a close friend through the process. And I think we learned through it together too, that, hey, Rohit, you need to provide training for people like me on like, give me the communications like templates and that train me. You can't just go and do this. And so that was all new stuff, and we kind of built it together, right? And then that helped probably other customers as well as me in the future.
So, Rinki, I think what you highlighted, that as startups, things will go wrong with customers. So I'm very curious, how did Rohit handle this, and, turning almost, impacting your job to becoming such a good partner that you brought, especially to 5 different companies? Like, could you share like 3, 4 points that like just every founder in your Lockstep, portfolio, or just coming to you, can do when things go wrong? And they will. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah, like I screwed up, right? I should have thought about it. I just didn't know, right? I didn't know that I should be telling everybody, hey, we're running a phishing testing program and this is why. And Rohit could have been like, Rinki, you just ran this wrong. Like you should have asked before. But he came back and he's like, he literally, I remember the look on his face. And I remember like us talking about it. And it was like, he felt worse than I did. Like he was devastated. And you could tell it was like, it's like as if someone gave him that news, not me. And like you could feel that energy. And it was like he came to the table and he's like, how do you here's the thing, like everybody's there when everything's going well. Like who's there when things are not going well? Those are the people and how they show up. That is like the most important thing. Cause like no vendor's perfect, no startup's perfect, nobody's perfect. And so how people show up when the imperfect things happen is I think like one of the most things. And like just he came to the table and he said, like, what do you need? Like, where can I help? And let's like work together to make this better. He was willing to throw in other things. And just true partnership. And again, it's like going back to the human, like he cared about me and his relationship with me more than the deal. Right. And so they gave us like I think I was at eBay for 3 years, maybe a little bit more than that. And so we finally did launch it, but I never paid, like he didn't ask for a renewal even once on an annual contract. So I had a 3-year contract for like basically 2 years for free. And finally, when we had a success, we finally like, in the last year, finally like got it out there and it was a successful program over there that we could show results from. But it took that long and, he never charged me for it.
So I think I've sold to quite a few enterprises, and often even, when vendor is not at fault, it's in this case, maybe somebody using the product made a mistake. They would never admit the mistake. And I've had churn, unfortunately, for those reasons, right? And obviously, like the best, I mean, what you're describing about Rohit is like a very, very seasoned founder and a human being to understand your pain. But often people are like, not like you. I can't say that you are a role model for every buyer who's willing to admit this mistake, openly on a podcast, right? So how do you think we manage when people are not like you? Because I have gone through those things personally, right? And we had to manage the situation. And my natural thing is I admit the mistake, but it also works negatively for the founder because the next reference, it's like, oh, the startup screwed up.
Yeah, like when you make a mistake and you own it. I mean, look, there are some mistakes that the consequences are real and it's not someone might feel like it's not forgivable and you have to like that is the risk of a mistake. At the end of the day, I'm pretty sure Abhishek, like you and the team became stronger because of losing that deal and like learning from that mistake and like making sure it never happens again. And so that's how I kind of think about it. I think like even if the founders like, or I mean, the customer is like, you know what, you guys made this mistake. It was devastating for me. You guys are out. I'm not willing to take that risk again. They can't like if the customer is like, talking to another potential customer, if the other customer says like, hey, did they own up to the problem? At least they can say like they were a true partner. They own the problem, like they own the mistakes. And like I can't knock them for that. I was just the one that like couldn't take the risk with that, right? But like they owned it completely and I'm sure they fixed it. Like it doesn't mean that like I think it could be like if a mistake is leading to a path that like, look, I can't do business, then that's fine. But like I think leading with integrity, leading with that is like so important. And I think also identifying like it's like a like I just I love it when like I say the word vendors, but I think like really the good founders, they're partners, and it feels like a partnership from day one, right? It's like you're gonna be in the throes with me, and like it's gonna feel like that. And so even if sometimes that doesn't work out, it was like a partnership through and through.
Yeah. Now, that's very insightful, Rinki. I think what you're highlighting is, I think if we just own and be respectful, this can't happen every time. And there will be people who will be seeing that. And over time, it will have large dividends, right? That's a very, very insightful point, Rinki. So I'm going to shift gears, Rinki. I know we didn't chat about this, but I do want to talk about it. What led you to start Lockstep and what is your thesis behind Lockstep?
You know, Lucas, the CISO at Alteryx and I, we've worked together over the last 17 years at various different companies. I always joke around saying like he breeds founders, like he literally like generates founders from team, and it's because he's very innovative and like product led. And we had always said we're going to go do something together. Well, life happens, and sometimes like timing, financial state is not right for both. Well, a few years ago, we kind of like said, like you're investing, I'm investing, you're advising, I'm advising. Why don't we come together and do it together? Because we're very complementary, and so like maybe we'll get to better decisions and where we put our money. So we pulled together our own money and started making angel investments. We did about 30 angel investments, and we were like, okay, well, we used up all the money we had for that, and so now what? And we're like, what about starting a VC fund? And so we read a ton of books. We probably talked to 100 VCs out there on like how they ran their business, learned everything we could about it, and then decided to raise a small fund while we remain practitioners. One, to see like, hey, can we get into the best deals? Can we like, are we able to even like do this well? And yet we still want to be buyers. And so like we launched it and like we took a risk. We put our own money into getting an office and like building this out. And mainly it was like, we want to flip the game on how VC is done, Abhishek. And it's like, you know, I want to be I want to work very closely with founders. I understand the buyer from a cybersecurity perspective and an IT perspective. And like I get them deeply and I want to use that to help founders, even if we're not investing, I want to give that back to the startup ecosystem. And like that was the whole thought process. And the other part of Lockstep was like I think VCs take a lot. They have to from the community, from the practitioner community, because that's how you understand where to invest. And we want to put that where the practitioner is the VIP, and we're building like a true community that's like I always say, there's a lot of communities that exist. To me, like I wanted to give back. I wanted to make the community super helpful to each other, supportive of each other, amplify each other, create opportunities for one another. And like that's what I see as community. And so like those two have gone together in a really meaningful way for us. And like it's just kind of like a dream come true.
It is. I still remember our conversation at Questo. It's so amazing that you were both talking about it and you made it happen. And it's so it's so good to be around people like yourself, Frankie, like who actually make things happen. And I meet so many people, and people keep thinking, iterating, and saying, just go do it. So that's really, really phenomenal. So Rinki, I think the insights you have starting Lockstep is really, really deep one, right? The amount of hours you're making it, being a tough end, and I do, other things and making Lockstep successful. What do you think people don't get about this model? Because as a founder, I see immense power of the model you're bringing, because I've worked with plenty of VCs and they can't make one CIO introduction. I may get in trouble for this, but that's actually true. Really, like, right? And they don't understand, like, especially in IT and security, the early go-to-market is incredibly expensive. And in cybersecurity, just first $5 to $10 million is so hard. Like most startups do not reach $5 million, right? And where with Lockstep community, you can completely change the game for startups, right? So what do you think people don't get, like when you talk to LPs, or do you think everybody gets right on the bat?
I don't think everybody gets it, and not everybody's a fan of the model, and we respect that, right? We are full-time practitioners, and that's why we're not leading rounds right now, right? We're getting in a meaningful check size into the hottest companies out there like yours, and so that to us is like the most. That was like how we did it. I think it's really hard work, and what we do is like, and where we're flipping the model is that you got to give back to people. That's what community is all about. It's like when I think about every opportunity that I've gotten has been because of my community network, that kind of thing. So you've got to show that value to a community before taking anything from them. And then there's like reciprocation that happens, right? And so we're not in there saying like, oh, the VC is separate from the community. The community is like, Lucas and I are practitioners and we're running this community as practitioner run community. It's all about like, let's get to know each other. Let's like build people that get the same problems you're dealing with. Let's create opportunities, like whether they're new jobs that are available, whether they're investment opportunities. Let's teach like what it takes to invest or what it is to advise. Let's connect you with meaningful people. Let's make meaningful relationships happen. And that's what people are looking for, especially after the pandemic. Abhishek, it became so hard for people to like, when the folks started going out to these events, they're like, why do I even go? Like I'm stuck at a table, like a big big dinner and there's no facilitated conversations. It's like awkward. And I went for what reason? And we understand that. We understand I'm the buyer. Like, and there's so many different personalities. And so it's like, let's make it so that it's very inclusive. It's our job to make those relationships happen and give back. And then like when we bring founders that we're like, hey, we'd love to introduce you. We don't just say like, here, let's just throw the company out who wants to meet. We try to do that matchmaking in a really meaningful way. And hopefully, Abhishek, like if that ever changes with Lockstep, you better hold us accountable. that
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it. Like, I think, I mean, Lucas is phenomenal. And I think I admire Lucas so much. I think the only thing he could be better at is karaoke, like, eh,
you try to work on those vocals.
yeah, I mean, yeah, seriously, I think, he needs to, put some time in there. So, Rinki, I can continue this forever. It's always like super exciting to talk to you, but I just have few last questions and rapid fire questions for you. What would be your dream job if you were not doing what you're doing today outside of tech?
This is so embarrassing. Like, okay, outside of my hobby, which I'm a grandma and I like crochet a lot, but I actually during the pandemic, I decided to go become a fitness instructor part time, and so I took all of her classes and I did everything, and then I didn't like I got in the best shape of my life and I was like all trained up. I was ready to go do this, and then like I didn't study for the test enough and didn't pass it, and then I'm like, screw it. So I think I would do something in fitness.
So you're going to be basically a late night infomercial on my TV pretty soon. This is going to happen. So obviously you've been doing so many things. How do you manage time, Rinki? Like, what is your advice? Like, I see a lot of founders, like we're all distracted all the time and we can't manage time. So how do you manage?
I don't like, it's funny. I've been like a ruthless delegator my entire life. Maybe because I'm the oldest sister, and so I'm bossy, and so I delegate as much as I can, and I focus my time on the things that I can do and I can do really well. But that's I think like my like main prioritization technique.
Oh, work-life balance, myth or reality?
I call it work-life integration. It's
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's a balance. Like, let's be real, we spend more time at work than we do in life, and so it's how do you really integrate those in a good way, and like how do you feel good about the where you're spending your time? Because sometimes spending time at a happy hour means I'm not going to make my son's water polo practice, which I'm like, damn, he has like 4 practices a week. It's okay, he'll live if I'm not there, and I feel really good about the decision of being at that happy hour versus water polo, and like I'm not, I don't feel any guilt about it. So to me, it's like it's integration and it's making the decisions that make you feel best and that you stand behind. And I think that especially applies to working moms.
So I'm curious, Rinki, how do you manage that and being mom of two kids, like doing all of this? Like, don't you feel guilty at times? And if you feel guilty, how do you, fix your guilty conscience?
It's funny, like, there were a lot of people that made me feel guilty. Like, they were like, "Oh, we thought we had like a nanny for the kids because we're both working parents." And they would, "Oh, the nanny was the mom." Or they'd be like, "Oh, so cute. Like, look, his dad is there to pick him up." And I'm like, when I go to pick them up, there's no, "Oh, cute." Like, they were so many people trying to make you feel guilty. Like, I don't feel any guilt anymore. It's like, look, I'm making my decisions. I'm standing behind them. Even the kids, it's like when they even try, they know it ain't gonna work, right? Like it's like we work hard to provide you guys a really good life. And so like you guys better be happy and not entitled. So like I think that I just make the decisions. There's some compromises and sometimes the trade-offs are hard and it's like, but you have to feel really good about that decision you make.
I may digress, Rinki, but you touched upon a very important point, and I think often people make about a work-life balance, and we don't see when we go to India where people who are, sort of farmer or labor class or a vegetable vendor, they're bringing their kids to work. Like that has concept has always been there because you have no choice but to earn food, and kids do understand the intention what it is, but we forget that often. So when someone like you do it, it's like, oh, you have to choose, and obviously your kids look up to you, right? And I think, why don't we look at that where people have absolutely no choice? It's like, why is it any different? Like, why purpose can't be part of integration? So that's, thank you, I think that's great advice, Rinki, and thank you for sharing that. One last question, Rinki. when you're not working, what is the first thing that comes to your mind for fun?
I do love to exercise. And so, like, sometimes just like everybody else, I don't want to get out of bed and do it. But like, once I'm there, it makes me feel really good. It's like good for my mental health. And it's what I do for fun. And outside of that, I love to travel.
Rinki, thank you so much. This has been a blast. I know it went over, but I can always talk to you forever almost. So this has been really, really good. It's phenomenal.
No.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Yeah,
Bye.
appreciate it. Bye, Abhishek.